Hey everyone, welcome back to another week of Ballroom Dance. As usual, I'm your president for this year, Prabjot Thandi, and this week we'll be talking about international ballroom dance style variations. We'll be going over just a few examples of types of variations that are comparable or comparable to the sorts of ballroom dance styles that we do here at our Ballroom Dance Society at Baylor. And we'll also be going over some general differences as well, apart from the specific ones we'll be going into later. And let's get into it. Now let's go over some general differences. One of the main differences between the two is that American ballroom dances are very much commonly social, and the international forms are done very commonly are competitive. Now we can still have competitions in either, and for both they can also be social, but just the American ballroom dances they just tend to be more social, and the international forms just tend to lean towards being more competitive. And that's just the nature of how the two developed in their respective natures. So the international form is done very competitively. It's dance to competitions, so partners will practice and practice together to eventually hopefully compete at a competition where there'll be judges, and they'll be judged and scored on a variety of different factors. And then they'll have numbers pinned or attached to their costumes or their clothing during the competitions, so the judges know who is dancing at what point and what group of dancers, because there's usually multiple people on the floor for some of the preliminary rounds in these competitions. Whereas the American form of ballroom dancing is more so done socially. We're a little more loose with it, with not only the structure but how we tend to perceive it. It's more so in our culture as a form of entertainment, as a hobby, and it's done for fun. Just an activity that we gather around to do with one another instead of being more so competitive. Additionally, American ballroom dances are commonly danced with open figures and stances, whereas the international forms are usually composed of closed figure and stances. So during our lessons here at our Ballroom Dance Society, you might hear us explaining during lessons to either get into open position or closed position. And what we mean by that is that the open positions are more loose, you're a little more spaced out from your partner, and the closed positions are usually more closer to your partner, a little more close contact. But it's just that the international forms tend to be more closed and the American forms tend to be more open. With the open, it allows for a little more open footwork, and it's just a little less intimate and close contact when you're in that open position. It allows for that sort of a social dancing sort of situation. It's very loose and free for one to dance as they wish. But the international form, the close contact, not only provides a sort of structure, but also the close contact also provides a little bit of rigidity. It allows the partners to be rigid, to communicate better with one another, especially in a sort of competition type of setting. Now going on to an example, let's talk about the Viennese waltz. The Viennese waltz, we've talked about it before in the past, but just to reiterate, it's the oldest form of ballroom dancing, invented or originating in the later 18th century in Vienna, Austria, hence the name. It's commonly distinguished from American ballroom waltz by its faster tempo. It's done much faster, and the basic step is the left turning bar. Now, by basic, there's no really any standard step that one would call the basic. There's a combination or a toolkit, if you will, of moves one accumulates in their in their dancing, in their knowledge of dance moves. But when a beginner is first learning the dance and being taught it, typically the first step that they might learn is, aside from the stationary box step, is the left turning box step for the Viennese waltz. For the American Ballroom waltz, it's a right turning box step that's more commonly taught to beginners as a basic step. And just a little animation there depicting a competitive, a competition in which Viennese waltz is done. Now, another example is the Argentine tango. Now, the Argentine tango originated in the late 19th century in the suburbs of Buenos Aires and Montevideo. And it has no basic step. It's completely improvisational. The American Ballroom version of tango has a 4-count basic step, being slow, slow, quick, quick, slow. Or sometimes, as we recommend or say aloud during our lessons, to make it easier for beginners to remember the basic step, we associate it with the name of the dance itself. So instead of a slow, slow, quick, quick, slow, we'll say instead T-A-N-G-O. Where the T and the A are slow steps, the N and the G are quick steps, and the last O is also a slow step. And the dance is also done in a very close manner with one's partner. So typically international dances, as we discussed, are done close together. They're very close contact and intimate. The Argentine tango is no different. As you can see in this example animation over here, is the lead and follow are very much so rigid. They're not very loose or free form. They might even seem or look, from their expressions and the way they dance, a little serious. And that's because that's just the nature of how international forms of ballroom dancing are done, including Argentine tango. They're a little competitive, and they're more close contact, and they're a little serious due to this competitive nature of the dance itself. And as you can see, the lead and the follow are very much so communicating with each other. The lead indicating to the follow how much to turn, how long to swivel for before they move on to the next move, and it's very much improvised. Now, American Ballroom waltz is also, or sorry, American Ballroom dancing in general is also very improvised, but we still have a sort of structure. There's usually for ballroom dancing, the international or American version, the dancers accumulate a number of dance moves for different styles of dance in a sort of toolkit, if you will. But in the example of Argentine tango, it's very much free flowing. So even though the dance itself is very rigid, there's not as much structure as there is in the American ballroom form of tango. So it's very rigid. As you can see, the lead's hand stays at almost the exact same level the entire duration of those swivels and turns they're both doing, and it's very much so a call and response sort of communication style happening between the two. Oh, yes. So those are two examples and some general differences between the international forms of ballroom dancing and the American ballroom forms of ballroom dancing. So that'll be it for this week. Thanks so much for listening, and see you soon.